Ready?
Yeah, when we have the CUP, do you want me to hand out these now and then you can explain it to everybody when we get to the CUP?
Or we can do it then, yeah, I mean, oh yeah, I need one for
This is related to
Or I'll probably just let you,
amendment.
I'll probably let you explain it, since you're better at it. I've got it.
Well, those are extras.
So, all right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 7th, 2023 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Asheville. Planning and Zoning Commission will hear public comment on items which are listed on the agenda. We also have ways to submit public comments via phone and/or email. We will begin tonight's meeting with roll call. Mr. Palmquist.
Commissioner Archibald.
Present.
Vice Chair Levi.
Present.
Commissioner Hoke.
Present.
Commissioner Fairclough.
Present.
Commissioner Bubanek.
Present.
And so Commissioner Barton is not present.
Correct.
And Commissioner Simmons has resigned effective of this meeting.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. First item on the agenda will be the approval of the minutes from the May 3rd, 2023 meeting. Any commissioners have any questions or comments on that? I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Oh, motion passes 5-0. There are several items on our agenda tonight that are being continued. The first one of these is a request for a level 2 site plan review for 68 Carter Street. Also is a request to conditionally rezone property at 99999 Grandview Place. Those are the two, correct, yes, those two items are being continued to the July 5th, 2023 meeting. I'll make a motion to continue those. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes on that 5-0. All right, with those two items out of the way, the first actual agenda item will be a request for a level 2 site plan review of a new 4-story mixed-use building and renovation of an addition to an existing 1-story building located at 226 Hilliard Avenue. The property is identified as PIN 9648286869 in the Buncombe County tax record. The property owner is Duke Energy Progress Incorporated. The applicant contact is Sean Sains, and the planner coordinating review is Clay Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell, how are you this evening?
Great, Mr. Chairman, how are you?
Doing well.
How many more meetings do you have? Not that you're counting.
Let's not talk about that.
All right. Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Clay Mitchell. I'm here to present to you 226 Hilliard, which we have been calling the Duke 2 in some cases, and I'll explain why. This site is at the intersection of Hilliard Avenue and Ashland Avenue. It is a vacant building today with some trees around the edge, some grass, 2 curb cuts, one on the north side on Hilliard, one also on Ashland Avenue, significant amount of pavement. It abuts to the south 2 separate zoning districts. It's currently zoned CBD. It's in the downtown area of our master plan. The zoning along the eastern side is office business. The RS8 on the left is a little leg of the property that abuts the neighboring. There's a transitional height zone as a result of that, but there's no additional requirements because it buffers that particular district. This was originally winding its way through the public process in a much larger application. This image on the right is from that application where it covered essentially the entire site. What we're talking about today is that revision, which shows a total gross floor area for both buildings at 97,530 and 110 residential units. Therefore, this is a level 2 review for the Planning and Zoning Commission. The existing building is now being proposed to be preserved and rehabilitated and used for a separate use, separate from the residential. And I'll get into the site plan details of the courtyard and the rooftop of that. The application process had a significant amount of activity in May. A visit to the Technical Review Committee, which didn't make it onto that. Downtown Commission reviewed it and commented in May 12th, and then received approval with recommendations from the Design Review Committee on May 18th, and is now here before you on June 7th. It is designated as downtown in the future land use. It is in the design review overlay. There's a lot of provisions because of that don't apply, and I'll go through those, but one of them, right off the bat, parking is not required, but provided by the applicant. Just to reorient you in case you're not aware of this site, this is standing in the middle of the intersection, looking toward the facility. You see the existing trees along both sides. I'll show this on the site plan. Unfortunately, those large mature trees are deep in the site, which would not allow for the building to be constructed in compliance with the UDO if those trees were attempted to be preserved. This is I think there's new artwork on the building now, but this is essentially the existing building. Along the front, it's been boarded up. There's kind of some pavement there. You can see the chain link fencing. It's a representative of a site that needs some tender, loving care. This is the original building. It's the Hayes and Lunsford Electric Company. And I did a little research on it, and this is the actual building. It was their founding location in 1926. So it'd be very interesting. Their 100-year anniversary is coming up, and you can see with the design elements at the top that they're restoring the building very close to what the original configuration of the building looked like compared to what it is today. Here's a site plan on the right, shows the existing building in gray. The orange parts, I guess that's that color, show additions. The L-shaped building is the 110 residential units. It's a 4-story building, which creates a podium for subsurface parking, well, not subsurface, below the building, that you see on the left image there. The left image shows the entire parking layout. So underneath both buildings, there will be parking at the surface level. If you look carefully, you see that some of the parking is actually stacked. That parking will be for reserved parking for residents. Obviously, you can't have stacked parking for people coming for other purposes to the site. In the lower, one thing to point out, in the lower left corner, you'll see a different treatment in the imagery, the hash marks. The applicant is researching, and I don't know if they've been able to determine yet, but they want to do pervious pavement in that location. And so that would be a benefit to stormwater management. The pink areas are retaining walls necessary. This site slopes pretty significantly from Hilliard down to the southern portion of the site. So to create that terraced effect, to flatten the site for construction and use, there's a couple of locations that have retaining walls. Also at this point, I want to point out there's the new access point is directly opposite of Grove Street on Hilliard. And you'll see that the roadway comes down and looks like it attaches to South Grove Street, but it does not. There will be a block there, and the applicant will be working with Transportation Fire Department to talk about what that is, but it will be either permanent or a semi-permanent blockage so that no car traffic will go through the site, but potentially could provide secondary access for fire or emergency services. It would also allow for the neighborhood of South Grove Street to access downtown directly through the site rather than walking all the way down and around back up Ashland Avenue. The way that is accomplished is either a resident in South Grove neighborhood could walk up through the internal portion of the site, or there's a sidewalk along the extreme southern portion. You can see the pavement down here. This never works very well. This is a sidewalk all the way across the site that connects directly with Ashland Avenue. So it creates a pedestrian connection. Bike traffic could travel through this as well. There are bike lanes on Hilliard Avenue, and someone from South Grove or Hilliard Avenue could get down that access way through the bollards into South Grove Street. The building height is compliant. The transition zone, there was no building even proposed in the transition zone now. Setbacks and frontage minimums are compliant. I didn't point out that little section of building up here is added onto the existing building to achieve the 80% frontage engagement with a key pedestrian street. Both Hilliard and Ashland are key pedestrian streets, and the UDO requires 80% of the building to front on those roadways. The impervious surfaces are equal, both pre and post. Most of this I've already gone through. The total spaces are 116. They have exceeded the bicycle requirements. There's discussion about upgrading the transit stop that's on the site with the reconstruction of the sidewalks. That will be between transportation and the applicant. I will point out that this site is actually less than 0.2 miles from the center up on Ashland, so it'd be very easy for anyone that lives here to be able to get anywhere in Asheville through public transportation. The accessible parking is at a compliant level, and like I said, bicycle parking exceeds the requirements. Because it's in the CBD, there's no density, no size, no impervious, no lot size, no lot width requirements. Open space is not required. Street trees are shown and compliant. Sidewalks are 10 feet or greater. There was a lot of discussion at the TRC about a sidewalk along the entrance road. It's just not feasible because it's too steep. It would be impossible to provide ADA compliant sidewalks up that access road. So most of the access to the site is through the central courtyard and along the southern boundary. Some design elements that were reviewed by the design review committee: fenestration along the windows, along the ground floor and upper. The building shows the 80% for frontage requirement. Like I said, no parking is required, but it is shown. All loading is planned on site with increased strength pavement in certain areas for the commercial and people moving into the residential units, so there'll be no need for parking or loading anywhere, whether it's on Ashland or Hilliard. Upgraded changes, I've got all that. Landscaping, it's all compliant. The vehicle use area, I'll show you the grade area. I'll show you a separate tree canopy protection. Just to give you, and this detail shows you the treatment that the applicant is proposing at the intersection. So street trees are currently proposed in grates along Hilliard, and we've tried to have discussions about options for street trees along Ashland to either bring them into a planting strip along Ashland and move the sidewalk back. Unfortunately, that's not something that was supported by Public Works or Transportation. It's questionable whether it's even allowable under the code. So the current plan shows the street trees at the back of the sidewalk, which gives us a full 10-foot wide travel sidewalk, which is good. In terms of putting street trees in a planting strip, it's much healthier for a street tree to be in a planting strip than those grates. So this is one item that we've been going back and forth with on trying to, we have this opportunity with a lot of width there to do something, but our hands are kind of tied with the code requirements and the ability to provide that planting strip along Ashland Avenue. This is the tree canopy protection. All of the green trees along the southern part and the western part of the site are separately recorded as the compliant plan for tree canopy protection. There's no need for fee in lieu. Here are the street trees details. You see the street trees at the access point are brought back to kind of stay out of those site triangles. It gets, I don't know if you've ever driven down Hilliard around 5, it's not a pleasant experience. Being able to see both directions is an important part. Gove Street is right at the peak of that hill, so it's the best access point, and having clear line of sight is going to be an important part of people coming in and out of the site. More details of the landscaping plan. So landscaping, tree canopy protection, all found to be compliant. The screened dumpster areas, as with both plantings, Public Works has commented on the size. Applicant is working on ensuring that both trash and recycling can be accommodated there. All of the street trees are compliant. Buffers are not required, but the applicant during the TRC process has put some extra landscaping treatment in that southwest area to provide additional screening to the neighborhood in South Grove Street. This is just some examples. This is the floor plan. This is what the floor plan looks like overlain in the building. You can see that there's an entrance in the central courtyard as well as a separate residential entrance directly onto Hilliard to provide both two different ways for residents to get in. So residents that are parking can come up either through the inside of the parking deck, or they can walk up that into that central courtyard entering the building, or if they're on foot, and they can come directly in off Hilliard. This is just a schematic. So the commercial space has not been identified with a particular use, but they do show activation of the rooftop. These are some renderings of the building, showing you what the applicant and the design review committee worked through. Some color renderings. Again, color renderings with some landscaping. There's some discussion about modifying some of the landscaping species to ensure that low landscaping along Ashland Avenue is four-season landscaping, some evergreens, because it does have a screening effect to the parking that's below the podium of the building. Here's the rooftop area in the courtyard. This is the area, so this rooftop area is planned to be activated. This is a courtyard that serves exclusively the commercial use. And then in here is an internal courtyard and a grassed area at the level of the parking. This other courtyard is raised because it's at the layer of Hilliard, or at the level of Hilliard. Here's a schematic of it from the front, showing it with the street trees from the side. This is one of some of the changes the applicant made after the design review committee already. There was some discussion about the appearance of the building kind of floating, and one of the recommendations that the design review committee that the applicant has implemented is carrying these brown elements of the building all the way down to the ground to make it ground the building, and you'll see that the original did not have that. So that was a change that the applicant made following the design review committee. This is kind of an overhead rendering of that courtyard area, the internal courtyard, the one serving the commercial, and the rooftop deck. So based on the reviews of the technical review committee, the downtown commission, the design review committee, we staff recommend approval of this level 2 site plan, subject to a few remaining technical and design conditions that the applicant is working on. And the applicants are here if you have any questions or if they want to add anything to that.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the commission. My name is Chris Day with Civil Design Concepts, and I've got to thank Clay. He adds just a bit more. I don't even have to come up here anymore. He does such a great job. But besides thanking Clay, I really want to thank the process. As Clay alluded to, we've been working on this project actively with the city for over a year, and it has changed. This is really, I would maybe call it Duke 3, because we're really on kind of the third version of it. It started with a big, massive building. We heard a lot of comments about the length of the building and the scale of the building and it feeling like a fortress, and it's changed. We had neighborhood meetings. Those neighborhood meetings, we've pulled the scale back, we slid the scale back, and then it introduced what we have here tonight, which is an adaptive reuse of the old historic Hayes and Lunsford building and the new podium residential building. I do want to add one bit of clarification. So we are proposing up to 110 units. They will be, the new building will be all residential, but the rehab of the existing building may include some of those residents. Some of that 110 may be in that space as well. So it's a rather large commercial space, and there's opportunity in there as well. So other than that, I am here for any questions, but myself as well as Sean Sains from my office, but I think Clay did a great job, and I thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Real quick question, Mr. Day. So you said up to 110 units?
Right, 110 is the plan.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're not going over 110.
So some of those may then end up, so you may have 108 in the main and maybe
We
two
may-
sitting in the.
Right, or we may have 100 in the new building and 10 in the other building. But yeah, so I just wanted to clarify that the adaptive reuse of that building is for a commercial space. All the space along the ground floor where it's being done, there's a kind of a lower level in there and a back of space that starts to get really deep that may work better for residential than just only the commercial. One other thing I wanted to point out was this little building addition that Clay described perfectly. It helps us meet that 80% requirement. It also provides us the new access stairwell and access up to this rooftop amenity. So this site plan isn't exact to match my site plans, but it does do a good job of kind of conveying the vision of where the activated spaces are out on the site.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions from the commission for either Mr. Mitchell or Mr. Day?
I wanted to ask about the section in the presentation. I saw, the 3D rendering shows this quite tall building added to the Hazen Lunsford building. But the section doesn't represent that. This lower level that was just mentioned is not shown on that.
So are you speaking of this addition?
No, the one behind it.
Oh, back there.
Yeah.
That is the existing elevator tower on the building.
Well, it's quite substantial
So-
where the amenity space is going on top of.
So this is, and that's
The whole courtyard.
I'm sorry.
I believe is that whole part of the building?
So this courtyard here is at
Right.
the Hilliard level, so that'll be the entryway. There's commercial entry and ADA access into the commercial space here. There's also access into the building here. And then this steps down, a set of stairs that goes down to that grass area at the
Yeah.
surface parking lot. This is a set of stairs that comes up to the rooftop. Similarly, on the west side of the building, there's a new stair tower being constructed attached to the building that provides you access up to this rooftop area.
What is
This-
that rooftop area on top of, though?
The
It's-
existing roof that's out there today.
Okay, so is that gonna be a two-story building? Because none of the plans or sections show that.
The building is really it's an existing, I don't know the height of it, we probably have it in some of the details, but it is basically a single-story building and then drops with grade behind it. So the existing building is
Is it one story, but it's like 2 stories high?
so it is, I have to check my plans on how tall it is.
Because I'm just trying to figure out where you mentioned sticking the extra residential units. Were you talking about that or on the street?
I was speaking to the fact that, let's see if we can find a good.
I think if you flip the.
Right
Yeah,
there.
so
500.
right here, you can see that this existing single-story building drops down a couple of
Yeah.
stories
What's
down
that
in here.
building? What's that building gonna be?
This is the existing commercial space. Underneath it, we're gonna do parking. And I was just saying that in the very back of this building, or potentially, I'm not sure how the floors end up lining up, but there's space in here that could be rehabbed into residential units as well. I was just trying to clarify that there may be residential units in here as this building is being programmed. Right now, on the ground floor, we're proposing parking under the building. Yeah. And then the level that is at Hilliard will be the commercial space,
Okay,
especially commercial space along the front.
thanks.
I got one or two questions. Pervious pavers area on that bottom left, that's awesome. Is the reason for adding that, is that because we're trying to keep under a certain square footage for stormwater, or is that we're
It's
just
really.
excited about the product and want to try it out? Or?
No, it's, so during our multiple visits to DRC, there was a lot of stormwater conversations, and there was a lot of conversations about, a lot of these projects just put an underground detention system and don't do anything more creative. And so we're looking to, so the pervious paving will be a stormwater control measure.
Okay.
But through the use of pervious pavers here, and we've also identified this area here in the middle that can become a rain garden. The goal would be to meet the city's stormwater requirements with those measures, as opposed to just putting it in pipes underneath the ground.
Sure. Awesome. I love that. I wish you do the whole thing impervious, but there's a price tag to that. So I'm sure it's a balancing act. One of the other questions I had was, when Clay mentioned the walk-through space, just so I can wrap my head around that correctly, he's referring to the walk-through space in between the residential building and the commercial building?
Right. So,
Go ahead.
yeah, so to clarify a little bit, right now, the drive access doesn't align with Groves, or I guess that's maybe Grove Street or North Grove. And so in essence, our access drive extends the old South Grove Street that closed years ago and has been chained off. We're putting bollards down here or some type of a gate so that we can still let pedestrians and bicycles come through here, but that we're not introducing vehicular traffic into that neighborhood. As we start at some of the earlier renditions, we were trying to put a sidewalk up along this access drive to connect to Hilliard. And what we found was, we've got in close to 20 feet of elevation change there. And so ADA-wise was getting really difficult. So we've created this alternate route where we sort of ride contour and come straight out to Ashland Avenue. One of the things that we've kind of talked about and been completely aware of is just the fact that we need to pay attention to like the CPTED or the safety guidelines, just as we're creating this opportunity through here. And while right now we're showing it kind of behind the dumpster, it may live in front of the dumpster, and we'll work through some of those details. But we're really excited about the fact that it creates an opportunity to stay at grade and connect over to Ashland without having to go all the way back through and hit Ashland down the street.
So really the walk through the property is really that west.
So there's an
north,
opportunity,
south.
there's technically an opportunity as you come up here. We would anticipate most folks would find their way to Ashland Avenue, but there's also connectivity through the site that brings you up and around and upstairs. And
Okay.
so there's technically connectivity for our folks to get down, but we think we've kind of created the path of easiest path to get over to Ashland.
Okay, because kind of where I'm going with that is in the central courtyard on the north, it's listed as a gate right there. So is that gate like open and closed by business owner, or is that a gate that's always open? Or I'm kind of trying to understand how that,
Yeah, so
functions.
the ideology there is definitely during business hours, it's open. It's really just kind of a way to take this span and the area between the buildings. Here in this rendering, there's an ideology of some type of a beam going across with some signage, but really I'm trying to see if there's a better version of it. But, we have not talked about what the programming would be. I could see that maybe after the commercial business closed, that this would be closed, but I don't know that it wouldn't allow people to still kind of get around the building. So we're not trying to create a fortress out here.
Sure.
Whether we close this off, there's plenty of other ways to get in and out of the site, but, yes,
I was just curious, and I know I'm not the fire marshal, but I'd be curious what the safety of that. I mean, are you allowed to close that if that's public space? And how
It's
that
something
flow
we
power?
definitely will work out with the fire
Okay.
marshal as we go through final TRC.
Sweet. Thank you. Sorry, I only got one or two others and I'll be quiet. As far as that rooftop space, that's being engaged publicly for anyone, not just residents to go up there. I mean, what's the,
I think the idea would be residents as well as the patrons of the commercial space there.
and that existing building's either being checked or beefed up that it can hold the load, the live load up there and not just?
I'm not a structural engineer, but it is a tank of a building. So yeah, I don't think that's gonna be an issue.
Okay.
Those will be checked
Sure.
as it moves forward through the proper building permits and reviews.
Okay. Then last question I had was the retaining walls mentioned. Those don't look like they're extreme retaining walls, they're just half a story tall or so. Am I correct when I'm reading on here?
Yeah, most of these retaining walls are, here where the grade's dropping off, and this is creating a patio here. So we've got, less than 10 foot here as it goes kind of from zero up at Grove, and it grows until it ties back into the building. Similarly, as we're trying to squeeze in some parking, we've got some perimeter retaining walls. None of them are significant in height. Back here, this one gets a little higher, but I think we're still, it really kind of goes from where we don't need it and maxes out. I can double check my plans, but I think it's
All right, I'm just checking
somewhere
where
a
I'm.
little over 10 feet.
That answers my questions, thank you.
Thank you.
One technical question I have for Mr. Mitchell has to do with is it a parking deck, is it not a parking deck, and screening? Because I know parking decks technically have to have screening. I was looking through the TRC report, and it appeared that this was not technically a parking deck because it's more of a one level with a podium on it. And so it sounded like screening was not technically required. But I know you indicated the landscaping along there, the idea was to use that as screening as well. So I just want to clarify that I'm reading that correctly and that is the correct intent. There's not, according to the technically screening, as we consider it for a parking deck, is not required, but they are providing screening in the form of planting. Is that
Correct. And
basically how it's been worked out?
Exactly. It's a surface parking lot
Yep.
with a podium building over top of it. And we did kind of have some of those same conversations. The intent would be kind of like even where that gate is, it shows on that front facade of a metal gate, kind of taking some of those similar type panels and placing them under the building as the podium grows, as the elevation drops away. That besides the landscaping, there's also I think the elevations call out for some type of material in there as well.
Almost as a physical barrier to kind of
As a
tie
physical
into that.
barrier, as something to just make it look like it's not a building at the beach that is wide open underneath it. So it was a little bit of that. We played with earlier versions where we just had a fake wall that came down, but then it just got really solid and really kind of took away from the pedestrian experience through there. So then opening it back up with some type of screen panels. And we've really, as Clay made reference, the geometry of this parcel and the right-of-way give us a lot of great opportunity to put go above and beyond on the landscaping in this area. So we can provide the street trees within the public right-of-way where they typically would live. And then on the private property, we've actually got an area there to continue with more landscaping. And as DRC brought up, the idea would be to plant that with species that gave seasonal color through there, that we weren't just, that it only worked in the summertime, so some evergreens.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, he answered it perfectly.
Good
Thanks.
I took it.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, we will go ahead and open for public comment at 5:35. Anyone wish to make public comments? Yes, please come up. Just come up and state your name, thank you.
I'm Helen Hart from the South French Road neighborhood. I've lived there for 10 years and we own 2 homes there. We've been watching this site for 10 years. Got going from our long protracted argument with Duke, with the substation, to our very great disappointment when that large complex came along, to our complete delight when this project came along. So we appreciate the access through South Grove Street and keeping it open for the pedestrians and not locking us out, and also not having dump trucks and garbage pickup there. We appreciate the green buffer they added on adjacent to the house there. We very much appreciate the activation of Hilliard because we have a lot of negative activity in this area, and we would like people on the streets doing good things. We are very happy with all the trees to make our walk to the city a little bit easier. We liked the design and the colors, and we were just thrilled with this, and we would really appreciate it if you would approve this design as is. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we will close for public comment at 5:38. This is slightly different. This is level 2, so it's reviewed on the technical merits of the project, which I certainly feel like it completely meets. I do think it's really nice. Just one, Mr. Day mentioned the CPTED, which is the Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design Principles. So things like he was speaking to and Ms. Hyatt was just speaking to, getting people onto streets, activating public spaces, providing those buffers but not blockage. So I do think, and that's kind of one of my questions about that parking deck. I think a lot of what you're doing here is working definitely towards that. So any other comments? Anybody wish to make a motion?
I move to recommend approval of the Level 2 project located at 226 Hilliard Avenue, known as the Duke, as presented based on site plans, elevations, and materials submitted and discussion heard during this review, subject to addressing any outstanding technical and design conditions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
And I just want to clarify, it said recommend, but this is the last stop. So you had the final approval, so you were approving it, and you had final approval, just so you know.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Ashley. Yes, I see that now. It says that extra word. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Day. Moving right along to the next item. These next ones are the legislative public hearing portion of the meeting. The next item is a request to conditionally rezone property located at 319 Biltmore Avenue from regional business to residential expansion conditional zone. Properties are identified as pins 9648460425 and 9648481623 in the Buncombe County Tax Record. Excuse me. Property owner is the City of Asheville. The applicant contact is Warren Sugg. Planner coordinating review is Clay Mitchell, and I should also note this is a continuation from the May 3rd, 2023 meeting, so we may not fully dive into every single detail. It probably will highlight mostly the changes.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. I'm still Clay Mitchell. So like you said, this, just to refresh your recollection, we're at a city-owned property just off of Biltmore Avenue at the intersection of recently constructed John Walker Avenue. This is a future land use designation of downtown. No changes required. It's bookended by traditional neighborhood and employment anchor. We went through the site plan last time. Nothing has technically changed from this slide, which was the prior site plan in terms of the details on the right. So the size, number of units, percentages of affordability, all of that stuff is the same. What I did want to go over with you are some of the changes that are responsive to the comments and the discussion that we had at the meeting last month, as well as some discussions that we've had with the applicant and various departments in the city who have been pressed by the planning department to provide us with support on this application so that we could get it back to you today with some defined information. So, I want to commend some of the departments that really kind of stepped up and went beyond to kind of get work, because everybody's very busy. All right, so first, what we have is the western side of the buildings. Along the western side of the buildings, in both areas, you will see new sidewalks that connect the surface parking deck beyond the southern building, that now the new sidewalk connects on-site directly up to John Walker Avenue, as well as a new entrance into the building on the southern building on the extreme northwest corner. Immediately adjacent to that, you see some depiction of surface level bike parking. So there's a significant number of that little square with the lines is bicycle parking for the residents of the southern building. On the northern building, this very interesting site, you see that this is ghosted in, and I'll let the applicants describe it in their renderings, but the attempt it was difficult, my understanding, to activate along Lee Garden Lane with non-residential units. So what the applicant has proposed is taking those ground level residential units that are fronting onto Lee Garden Lane and actually giving them kind of an external treatment so that people that live on those, and the appearance of the building will be that there's an activation there. And you can see that connected with the new sidewalk that connects with all three of those entrances, and also provides another connection point from John Walker Way up to the existing sidewalk facilities on Lee Garden Lane. On the east side of the buildings, a lot of changes. The clubhouse, leasing office, amenity space in the northern building has been expanded. A couple of reorientations to bring new entrances onto John Walker Avenue to provide additional activation on John Walker Avenue. In addition, you see the stairwell going up to the courtyard on the north building, and you can see the courtyard programming ghosted in there on that site plan, which we have some renderings of, which I'll show you, but you see that here. This stairwell has been moved to coincide with a crosswalk that will cross here. And that crosswalk will connect to this area. So the applicant has responded to our concerns about this direct connection between the northern and the southern building. And you can see the hash marks showing the walkway for people that are parking or in the southern building on ground floor, being able to get through, cross the street, and get to the amenities in the northern building, primarily that courtyard. On the southern side, you see that the retail area has been expanded fully from the south to the north with a curve around. So now a portion of the retail actually activates onto John Walker, and the amenity space for the southern building has been moved a little bit to the west to kind of continue that activation down a little bit on John Walker Way. I can say that just before the meeting, in fact, we were told that the fire department has signed off on a very slight speed table here that will allow us to provide kind of a real focus point for a high visibility crosswalk that kind of maintains that connection and provides significant alerts to drivers that this is a connecting point that's going to be heavily used for pedestrian access. On the landscaping plan is essentially exactly similar. There's been some new treatments over here on the western side to accommodate and reflect the addition of the sidewalks. So in most places where all of the landscaping was against the building, now we see some landscaping move to the other side of the sidewalk, which will provide some nice landscaping framework for those sidewalk amenities. Tree canopy, essentially the same. New details in the plans help really understand what's going on with the programming at this site. The applicant has provided very clear delineation of where the bicycle parking area is. You see that in the light blue. These are the surface level, and by surface level, I mean where the parking level is, external parking, so that this bike parking will be outside. I'll show you later where there's going to be internal bike parking. The color codes relate to the programming of the site. So the red is the amenities for the residents. You see in the northern building, all the different uses. There's meeting space, there's a leasing office, there's a mailroom, there's some fitness areas and other offices in that northern site. On the southern building, that red area is primarily a mailroom and packages. In the retail space, the current design shows two potential spaces. So you see that kind of L space at the top and then the space on the bottom with an entry lobby there, and then the retail on the north side of that building has a direct access point onto John Walker Avenue. Once we move up in the building to the second floor, we start to see where the internal bike storage is going to take place for each level. You see the two blue areas on the northern building, and now you can see the activation of the courtyard. This is residents would, in the northern building, can access that courtyard directly from the hallway. Residents from the southern building will come across the street and go up either of those two stairwells, and you see some of the ideas for the programming in that courtyard area, open with gardens, sports courts, usually bocce. You also see that there are internal amenities, so there's lounge areas that would be usable all the time, rather, the courtyard might be a challenge in the winter. You also see on the southern building new amenities for those residents, lounge areas, and I believe some fitness space, again on the second floor. Then as we move up, so this is representative of floors 3, 4, and 5, you see the same repeated with internal bike storage for each floor, and the corner building, the corner of the northern building is activated with lounge space on each floor. The renderings have changed to the extent that they reflect the increased activation. So this is the northern building, and you can see the width of the activation along John Walker Ave there. This is the northern building along Biltmore, looking directly at the building. This is the entirety of the activation from the amenity space. This is the northern building. I'll let the applicants talk about this, but this is where the three access points are going to be from the residential units directly at the ground level. The southern building, this is the one that shows the increased area where the space has been come around the building, and then you start to see the slope up to the entrance, and then gradually, as the building becomes over here, that second floor, more or less, becomes ground level. It's really the first floor of residential uses, though. The endpoints of each building. And then the renderings, I'm going to let the applicant present those. And then these are the same conditions we talked about potentially, and the technical modifications that will carry through to the city council for the conditional rezoning. We have worked with the applicant so let me step back. No one knows, apparently, this is all my opinion, no one knows definitively what is going to happen on Biltmore Ave. There is talk of a turn lane, there is talk of a signal. Because this is a joint project between the city and the North Carolina Department of Transportation, we do not have definitive plans. But the applicant has signaled that they would like to do something as a pedestrian amenity out there. If the applicant installs a 10-foot wide sidewalk and there is a widening of the road to accommodate a turn lane because of DOT and the city's work, that sidewalk will be chewed up in its entirety. That seems kind of unnecessary. If there is a widening, the applicant has indicated that they'd be willing to build a sidewalk that is compliant if the road is going to be widened, but there's a time constraint. We can't have a condition that continues on well past construction. So working with transportation and the applicant, we propose this kind of option. If the city can present plans that shows what's going to happen by the end of this year, the applicant will be able to accommodate those plans and do an installation of a sidewalk along Biltmore Ave. If we cannot provide them with those plans, the applicant will merely have to correct the the driveway tip downs that are currently in place along what we believe is the 8-foot wide sidewalk that is out there. The second issue reflects, which is kind of outdated now, reflects that the applicant will work with the city departments, fire department, and transportation to design and install an appropriate high visibility crosswalk, which the recommendation is that there would be a slight rise and a speed table at that location along John Walker Ave. So those are the two new condition items that we think encapsulate the discussions between the departments in the city and the applicant's willingness to work with us. This, you know, all this is approved with conditions back in April. It's had its neighborhood meeting. You heard it on May 3rd. This is a continuance. This tentative date of June 27th may be, I'm not sure yet if that's a possibility. The council's agendas changed pretty significantly. Those are the changes. The applicant has its own presentation. Do you have any questions for me, or would you like to hear from the applicant first?
Any questions for Mr. Mitchell right now? Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and hear from the applicant team then. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is in, how do you make this into,
It's a full screen option.
oh, is that here? This? Do I know anything about that? What does this thing do? I'm not gonna click things. Is there a full screen option? The 3 dots? Annotation, present. I thought it was present. There we go.
Thank you very much for letting me come back before you. My name's Lee Cochran, Senior Vice President for Development for Laurel Street, the City of Asheville's partner in this development. I'll try to be very brief, because Clay did such a great job, but we have a couple images and just want to describe a few things, and hopefully this will. Just quick, just if you don't know us, Laurel Street, we're a Charlotte-based mixed-income housing development firm, building mixed-income housing for families and seniors for a variety of incomes. Mixed income is what we do. It's kind of our mission. I thought, and I will be real brief, I thought a timeline would be helpful because some of those questions came up last time we were before you. The original RFP that the city issued for this site was back at the beginning of 2020. Through a back and forth process, we've been working, responded to that, and were eventually selected by the city and did an LOI with the city back in February of 2022. We added some detail just to show that there have been some changes to this development over time, not just the ones in the last 30 days. When we signed the LOI, it was for a minimum of 200 units, of which 20% of those units would have been affordable. We continued to work with the great folks at the city to keep refining and bettering our plan. So by the time the city council approved a purchase and sale agreement with Laurel Street in August of 2022, our minimum number of units was 215, and we'd gone to 30% affordable, 20% at 60% AMI, 10% at 80. So we'd increased the affordability level of the project with just the city land being the city's financial contribution. There's no other city financial contribution other than the land. Once we got that, we started the rezoning process in November of 2022, and now we're here today. Just real, this is a little bit of some of this is repeat, but we've actually increased from August. Now we're at 221 units. The mix is important, I think, because if you add up we have a significant number of 2 and 3 bedroom units. We find that's different than many market rate developers building this kind of product. Does a lot of studios in ones. We build for families, seniors, singles. Anybody can live here is really our message. If you add that up, it's 353 bedrooms. So we always think density is really people, not units. So think of it as 353 people, even maybe more with a couple of roommates sharing a bedroom, but rather than units. So we think there's a lot of density here. And the commercial space is now 2,600 square feet. It was about 1,500 when we came before you last. This is going to be really quick because I really want to show you pictures. We've made what we think are 5 significant changes to the design. And I'm going to actually walk through these with pictures rather than bullet points. Make sure I get them right. It's a little dark, but this is our attempt at a rendering. This is an attempt to show you what we think this will become. And what we want to highlight 2 things in this slide. One is the connection across the street. We always did consider this one community, 2 buildings on either side of an existing new street. So the connections between the two buildings are really important. You now see this really important mid-block connection. In addition to existing crosswalks at the ends of John Walker, we now have this mid-block extension, which we think is even better than what we've shown here because we do like the idea of the speed table. We really want to incorporate that. And we could change some of the painting and we really want to make that mid-block connection a really significant connection. Combined with a road that has a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, we think it'll be a road that is for people, cars, and bikes all together using the street. In addition, you see the amenity area that you did not get a good sense of last time, and we've actually done some design work on it. You see it's a little dark, I wish we had a little lighter, but effectively the idea is that that is an amenity for both sides of the building. So you access it either from John Walker with two stairways up onto it, or you could access it from the northern building from the inside. It's hard to see, but you actually see people sitting along. We've kind of created a table that people could basically sit there with a computer, eating lunch, and be looking down on John Walker, in addition to kind of the normal amenities you might see at an apartment, bocce ball, outdoor movie theater, that kind of thing. But that's really, that is our best amenity, we think. That is the amenity that's going to sell the unit and is designed to kind of really work well with John Walker. This is similar to the slide you've already seen, but we wanted to repeat how we've taken the retail and really commercial space and gone along Biltmore. It used to be only in the bottom right. We've now turned the corner around John Walker. To reiterate, this is 2,600 square feet of commercial space that in our mind is about commercial space that's designed for the residents of this area, not kind of destination retail, but what does the community need? We're working with community groups. It could be retail space, it could be nonprofit space, but it's space that's needed in the community, not kind of broad community space. But we've gone to 2,600 square feet, and we've put the mail and package room, which, as you know, get a lot of people in and out every day, on either side of John Walker. That kind of extends even farther in. So they kind of face each other across the street. Those mail and package rooms face each other next to the retail. The second, I want to show this view because I think it does a little better job of what we tried to do on Lee Garden. Our architect, Neighboring Concepts in Charlotte, we really came up with this idea. It was a great idea. We loved it. If you look at those three large 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom units that are face Lee Garden, by the time you get to that part of the building, while we're calling it the second level, is now the first level. So what they're really working on creating is, while those units will have their back door into the building, their front door now is onto Lee Garden. They will basically have front yards. So the 3 units on the northern building and the 1 unit on the southern building will have essentially a front porch and a front yard. So they will walk out their front door onto Lee Garden. And I've drove the site again today, and the best way to walk to South Slope is down Lee Garden. So you can imagine folks that are there are going to walk out their front door and walk down the street to the South Slope. And we think actually a lot of people will use that pedestrian connection more than they'll use Biltmore. So they're still refining that, but they want to create those 3 units almost as front porches to help activate Lee Garden. I think I'm gonna. So those were the 5 major changes we made: enhance the connection between the 2 buildings, increase activation on John Walker, increase the amount of commercial space, change the location of the commercial space, and increase the activation on Lee Garden. It's what we heard, and we wanted to be responsive to it. I think other than that, I will not try to repeat the discussions we've had about Biltmore. We know that what we need on Biltmore eventually is a wide sidewalk, and between that sidewalk and the building, hardscape, not greenscape. Because if it's gonna be real commercial space, you don't have like little sidewalks going to front doors, you have kind of a whole hardscape plaza. I don't know quite how we get there working with NCDOT, but that's where we're gonna get, is a wide sidewalk next to the building with hardscape between the building and the sidewalk. So I will not open a building that has just an 8-foot sidewalk along a curb on a very, very busy street. Our residents need something that'll be closer to the building one way or the other. So with that, I won't take any more of your time, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Comments, questions from the commissioners?
Thank you for the presentation, and I'm really happy about a lot of these changes. One question that's maybe not totally relevant to this is on, what's the e-lobby? It's like on the near the bike storage. It's kind of a long rectangular room. I'm just curious with that.
Oh,
Elevator lobby, okay.
I was about to say some sort of e-commerce.
I was trying to, okay. Never mind. Sorry, thank you.
So Commissioner Barton is not able to be here tonight because he is at a conference, but he did send an email to all of us, all of the commission members, just because he had made some comments and was very interested in this project. He wanted to have a way to, let us know what his thoughts were. And for the development team, I would like to share that with you. I printed it out here, so I'm just going to read it. I can certainly send you the email as well. But he says, I appreciate the modest changes the developer has made, the addition of a retail space in Building 2, the addition of porch patios with a connection to a walkway near Lee Garden Lane, and the elimination of 10 parking spaces in favor of a little bit more active ground floor use. The 2 new stairways connecting up to the elevated courtyard for Building 1 raises some additional questions for me, i.e., are the doors at the top of the stairs just to remain locked at all times? If so, why not have the doors at the sidewalk since the space is still, excuse me, not truly public access? So I'm not prepared to form an opinion about that addition. Overall, just based on the information presented in the revised plans and the new staff report, and without having the benefit of the important Q&A and discussion that we have at the meeting, I would likely vote to support this project moving forward. It's far from perfect, and I remain disappointed by the high amount of parking and low amount of commercial retail space. But given that the underlying zoning is regional business, which is by definition an auto-centric use district, my personal feeling is that this is likely the best we are going to be able to get for a multifamily development on this site. So just speaking for me, the community's staggering need for more housing would be enough to tip the scales. So again, just wanted to be able to present those comments from Commissioner Barton directly to you. I will say I definitely appreciate the changes. I do still have a few questions. I know I see Chris Cairns sitting over there in the corner. I'm tempted to ask him questions about Biltmore, but I know that is just a massive can of worms, and I'm not sure I want to get into it. Probably the biggest question I have on Biltmore, and I think Mr. Cochran, you answered, or at least provided some, what I'll call reassurance, is I really still want to see some activation along there. This is, I know, more of a question for water department. What could be done with those underground and above ground water service connections that are on the front of the building right now? Is there a way to get those moved so that it opens up the ability to have that space be hardscaped? Perhaps that's another, I don't know, hashing out over early morning coffee among departments. Along the backside on Lee Garden Lane, definitely appreciate, my thinking is that those apartments almost become like townhouses facing along there, so I definitely appreciate that. Is there any particular programming for what appear to be large kind of green spaces at the edge of both of those 2 buildings along Lee Garden at all? I mean, they just appear to be lawn space, which is fine, but I didn't know if it was like one would be a dog park or that kind of thing, so.
I actually, and I'm probably speaking only for myself, is I almost imagine them like green space because I want them to feel like front yards of a townhome. So that they're not actually, they're public in the sense of, no, there's no fence around it, there's no restriction on going into it, but it feels more like a front yard with kind of a sidewalk.
Okay.
I could see because it starts to, Lee Gardens pulls away, you could put almost a little bit of a pocket park plaza at that corner that with some benches and something to make, that could be public space, a place to sit, a place to hang out because it's farther away from that front door. So I actually could see right there, right at that corner, putting some programming there.
Yeah.
That would be true public.
Yeah, I was even thinking the one on the south building where again, it
yeah,
pulls
yeah.
even further, like
Yeah.
that seems even the better because there isn't necessarily a unit that butts
That's
directly
true.
to
That's
that,
true.
so.
Okay.
I guess the only other, particular question I have right now is something Commissioner Barton did bring up in his comments I just read, is those 2 staircases going up to that second floor. kind of going back to the brief mention I had about CPTED on the previous project, I could certainly see the developer's desire to have that space be closed off. And I'm curious as to what the current thinking is about where that would be, high or low. And because there are different perceptions of that, correct?
There is, and I would say, when I actually advocated for the fencing at the top, the gate, well, let's call it a gate at the top. So it is private space, so if you go in, you would have to have some sort of fob or something to get into the space. Originally conceived, the fences, this gate were at the bottom. I think that sends the wrong message. Sometimes what something looks like gives the perception of what it is. And if you put a gate at the bottom, it feels like hey, we're us and you're you. So there is some concerns of security of having the gate at the top, but that's where I think the gate should go because of the perception of, feels more open if that stair is open and but you still see a gate at the top, you still can't get in. But that's really the security versus perception. It's funny because SEPTED is actually about creating the perception of safety.
Yes.
And if that doesn't do that, but I also think there's a point where you have to make a perception of openness. So that's the balance. So right now we have the gates at the top, and that's where we'd like to keep them. Honestly, that's where we would build them, and only if there became a serious issue would we feel like we'd have to move them down.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Cochran. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I completely neglected to point out that Mr. Cairns is here in case you have questions about that. And without adjudicating the actual project, I just want to thank him for taking the time to come in case you wanted to talk to him. And I'm sure he'd love to talk to you if you have any questions.
I'm sure he would love to talk as well, and I guess for the commissioners, if you don't know Chris Cairns over in the corner, you probably remember him from the retreat. Certainly, if any other commissioners have questions about Biltmore, I just know that it is I think I've said my piece, or should say leave it as what I've said already. We should go ahead and open for public comment. We will open for public comment at 6:07. Anyone wish to make public comment? Yes, please, come up.
Hello, my name is Vicki Meath, and I'm the director of Just Economics. Just Economics is working on affordable housing, and part of our work on affordable housing focuses on city and county-owned land and its uses. This is a newer aspect of our work, and we applaud the city's 2019 policy for implementing affordable housing on city-owned land. I'm here tonight because I think there's an opportunity to make sure that the community is engaged on 319 Biltmore and ensuring that this property is being used to the greatest benefit of the community. Between the purchase of the property and site improvements, it looks like the city spent close to $6 million of our tax money on this property. And according to public tax records, Buncombe County values the property over $13 million. So for me, this is a significant subsidy to the developer, and it's in the best interest of the community to make sure that this community investment yields positive results. So I want to offer two main comments around this property. First off, the new AMI numbers were recently released by HUD, and the area median income for a single individual will soon be $59,500, which means that 80% of AMI will soon be supporting people who make $47,600 a year, or equivalent to $22.88 an hour for a full-time worker. While I know that we need housing at all different levels, I believe that we really aren't getting at real affordability for much of our working class until we're at 60% AMI. So my suggestion is that the 10% of units designated for 80% AMI be set aside for voucher holders, so that we have 20% of the units available to people making 60% AMI and 10% set aside for voucher holders. Additionally, I just want to say that I'm grateful that the commercial space was increased, but I think I would love to see that the commercial space have some type of commitment for an amenity that's useful for both Maple Crest and the folks that will be residing at 319 Biltmore, like a childcare facility or a grocery store. I think these were talked about in the original RFP. One of the bullet points said provide a mix of uses, not just housing. Non-housing uses should seek to provide needed goods, services, and assets to existing communities. So I'm not an expert on housing. I am really new to this work. But I believe that this is a significant subsidy to the developer through the land, and I think it's important to get it right. And I want to ask you all, as the experts on development, to make sure that we're asking for the type of development that complements Maple Crest, that contributes to our affordable housing stock, that provides assets and benefits to the community worth the type of investment of our tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, we will close for public comment at 6:11 p.m. I did run a quick, while I was sitting here, I didn't get to do it before. I know it gets talked about, and I feel like we've reviewed it, or at least have had discussions about it on previous other projects, the kind of per unit or per door subsidy when you're talking about affordable housing. And if my quick math is correct, if it was, let's just call it a $6 million investment from the city, then we'd be looking at somewhere around $91,000 a unit, give or take. About $3,000 a year over that 30 years, which seems fairly reasonable. But just for some context. As far as the vouchers, it is my understanding with all of these affordable housing projects that we have coming through the city that vouchers are required to be accepted, correct?
I can do better than that. So yes, every development we build, we accept vouchers.
Okay.
So that's just philosophy.
Okay.
Of the 20% at 60, a minimum of half of those, we're actually working on what's called project-based vouchers with the Housing Authority. So they'd be designated as project-based, and we actually are going to do more than that. That's our minimum with the city. We're going to work with the Housing Authority to set aside. So those, at least, so that'd be 10% of the total units, as up to almost 20% would really be serving households at 30% AMI because they're using project-based vouchers. So, but in addition, any of also our 80% units would accept tenant-based vouchers.
Okay.
So.
On the subsidies, in the conditions, and I don't know if they've been updated for this revision, but I don't see anything about subsidies in the affordable housing commitment and the project conditions. And sometimes we do have, when somebody has a land use grant, for example, it will say X will be almost set aside for vouchers or subsidies. But I don't know if that's a commitment you're willing to make at this point in the conditions.
I probably shouldn't talk, because the commitments around subsidies will also be in our agreement with the city of because the city of Asheville is selling the land, so they may not be in the zoning commitment, but they'd be in the.
Right, but it's a different, it's a process that we need to get it into the conditional zoning as well, because when, I'll be doing the affordable restrictions, both because of the agreement, but also because of the conditional zoning. You just come at it from a different, if you didn't meet those conditions, it would be a zoning issue in addition to a contract issue. So that's all I'm asking, if it's something that you're willing to be more specific in the conditional zoning conditions about subsidies, acceptance or set-asides or whatever you want to say.
Well, we definitely need to get the part about the vouchers in here because that wasn't.
That's what I'm saying, it's not in there, I don't see
Yeah.
it.
I'm not seeing it, that's why I wanted to check
That's-
and just make sure.
I mean, you don't have
We
to
should
agree
have
to
it.
it, but we just, do you want to agree? The only way we can add it is if you say that you would agree to some language, but.
Well, again, and that's why I phrased it in the way of saying, my understanding is for all city projects now, if we're doing these affordable, if the developers are agreeing, they need to require to accept vouchers. So I see Sasha over there.
On your point, on that point, that's a fair housing issue. So if it's
Sure.
affordable housing,
Yeah.
if you have to, that's a fair housing. We don't
Yeah.
put that in conditions. But to say a set-aside is a very different thing than just saying, we're not going to discriminate against people with Section 8. So
Yeah.
that's my point. I don't know if you wanted to.
Ms. Vertunsky, did you?
I'm hesitant to get, so generally, when we've had affordable housing conditions with a partnership with the city, they've been conditions in whatever document we have with the city, so ground lease or a sale, or the conditions are there. We're open to putting them on as a zoning condition as well, because they just would match, like we would do more than what we're committing to
Yeah.
the city, so. But I don't know how language gets written.
You don't have
but-
you don't have the percentage in the language right now.
Well, I mean,
this
yeah,
would go
we-
on to council, so you can have some time to modify it.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask, like, as long as we're very set on our commitment with the city, so we know kind of what the commitments are. How to get it added to this is new to me, but I'm open to working with however that gets added, we're
Okay,
open to
I
that.
see what you're saying.
Well, I mean, I think it simply would be, here, I'll propose this. In the, excuse me, suggested motion to approve, we just need to have a sentence that says, the housing choice vouchers will be accepted and the exact percentages are yet to be determined, but will be decided prior to council approval. I mean, is that,
I don't think that you need, my personal opinion is I don't think you need to add that in there because they're already meeting these certain requirements. And if you put that in there, then you lock in those like 2 spaces where they can only accept those requirements. And then what if somebody comes along and they meet the 10% AMI and they want that room? Well, then they have to they can only rent it out to somebody with that housing choice voucher. So it's like, I don't like to have that locked in there. I would rather have it open the way it is now. I don't like to.
yes, Ms. Fortune?
So I'm just going to say a couple of
Yep,
things.
go-
So you heard Mr. Cochran talk about project-based vouchers.
Yes.
So that's a little bit different than your regular housing choice voucher, where if I'm the voucher holder and I come to you and I say, hey, I got a voucher, I'd like to rent a unit. So it is like a set aside and it's working with the housing authority. I think one of the team and I were talking, if we added language, it would be okay. We would just want to say subject to approval by the housing authority. Because this project-based vouchers, they have the ultimate authority if that gets funded. It's really, it's a decision, it's federal money. The city doesn't have control over whether or not the housing authority, I was going to say HACA, the housing authority approves that. So, but they are willing to accept vouchers in their other units or, so we're working on this as a whole community, if you don't know. We're working on
Sure.
getting voucher holders into units everywhere, not just this one project. So we're working on this.
I just think that puts more restrictions on it than we're trying to get people into this affordable housing. So I don't like to put that extra restriction on.
Yes, but also, just so you know, financially for a developer, my understanding is that when you have project-based vouchers, you also have a guaranteed income stream.
Oh, yeah.
So it takes out some of that financial risk for a landlord to be accepting vouchers. So it actually makes it's good on both sides. Just as a note. Is that all right?
No, and I think the only reason we're having the discussion, and I understand where Ms. Ashley is coming from, is that typically with these, any of those affordable housing parameters that we're setting in a condition for a project in the CZ process are in there. And so if there's a condition coming from the city selling the project to Laurel Street, then that should also be in here, because then that becomes the mechanism to make sure it gets enforced. Unless there's some other mechanism through the sale to enforce that.
There it is, yes.
Okay.
Okay. 'Cause I
And
was
in
gonna-
which case, then it doesn't seem like it has to be in here. Correct?
Well, once it's sold, so the condition might be met while it's sold, but then you're going down the line. So that, in the conditional zoning, let's keep it.
It makes it
sounds
stay
like
there.
you're willing to say that we just don't want to get too precise. So
Right.
just, and we have had conditions before where it is based on some other entity's decision. So work
Okay.
with, a condition that says, and we'll work with the housing authority towards project-based rental
Excellent.
assistance.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Would that satisfy, for those who want to see something about trying to work in some vouchers, is that adequate?
Yeah, I'm just gonna try to write
And we
something
can get more
real-
between here and council. But council
Yeah,
might
yeah,
have
yeah.
the same question, because they're so used to seeing something about vouchers in an affordable housing
And
condition.
the,
just so you know.
Housing Authority. Housing Authority.
Work with the housing authority.
Yeah, Asheville Housing Authority, correct?
It's
Yeah.
Will Palmquist.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I wanted to ask a question about the RFP and the suggestions for retail and commercial space in the building. Would a staff member perhaps be able to elaborate on that? What's your question? Well, was it described generally as a component of the project? Was there a certain square footage? It says a mixture of uses. How much was that emphasized?
I don't think there was a particular square footage. Of course, when you do something like this, you try to dream big, and at the same time, you try to be realistic. We worked with a Lord X Sargent, which is a consulting firm out of Atlanta, to really run pro formas and look at what we think could maybe happen. What does this cost? How much does this cost per unit? All of the different pieces and mechanisms. And in between that and late 2020, the pandemic happened, and everything changed. Like, all the assumptions changed around development, what's doable in terms of retail. People started abandoning offices, and, so there were some of the proposals had office space in them, there's all kinds of things. So I think just that it was really seriously a seismic shift that happened. And between interest rates and construction costs, it's just really not the same market as it was 3 years ago. And so, really, I think thinking through that whole process, Lee went through the timeline, when we went to council last August, and when we were working on this with Laurel Street, it's like, well, what's the most important? And housing units are the most important. So we know that it's not the retail we wanted, or it's not the, the mix we originally wanted 3 years ago, but ultimately we have to, similar to Mr. Barton's comments, the housing's the most important piece, so.
I have a question that's probably directed at Mr. Mitchell. The John Walker Avenue and the calculations for activation spaces, or street activation, is the space along John Walker Avenue part of that calculation? Or it doesn't have to be to you, I thought you were.
You mean the percentage calculation?
Percentage, yes.
Because there is no requirement in this particular zone for that kind of thing. So that activation is more of a thematic discussion that we've had.
Okay. Okay, never mind.
Sorry, I'm just writing down something else, because in the suggested motion to approve, it talks about working with the city departments to determine and install appropriate high visibility crosswalk, which may or may not include a speed table, and it sounds like now we can cross out the may not, and that it will include a speed table. Is that correct?
Looking at Chris here.
Yeah. I will include a speed table per requirements of the traffic department.
There's already some farther west in the development.
Okay. Okay. All right. I just like to say I want to check what we're going through here. And then also on the commercial space in the Exhibit E project conditions, I don't see that called out anywhere as far as the exact amount of commercial space that is being provided. And it seems like we need to have that also listed in here. Mr. Mitchell, do you have the whole project conditions pulled up there?
Yeah, I can add. I'm sorry, I was looking.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I'm kind of making sure some of the stuff we've talked about even just this evening gets adjusted right.
So just in August of 2022, I'm sorry to add to this discussion, what was conveyed to the council when they voted to approve to enter the purchase and sale was commercial space of approximately 1,000 square feet.
Okay. That was in the previous.
just asking to update the condition.
Correct,
Yeah.
update the have the commissions be
2,600.
updated to what we've got now is the 2,600 square feet. So,
That's in number 3, so it mentions right now, it just says leasable space, but
yeah,
it seemed important.
Leasable
The-
space.
The kind
and
of,
separate community amenity space and 2,600 square feet of, a minimum of 2,600 square feet of leasable space. I'm kind of looking at condition, Exhibit E, project conditions number 3. If we just insert and a minimum of 2,600 square feet of, that's what I'm inserting.
it says leasable, you could have retail, single to.
Well, that's why I was just saying a minimum of 2,600 square, yeah.
Commercial.
Commercial.
Let's see, number 3.
I changed it to commercial. If the applicant's agreeable to that.
Minimum of 2,600 square feet of leasable space or
Of
is-
commercial.
of commercial space? Okay,
Because it could be retail or others
Yep.
have talked about other uses. That's,
Okay.
if that's what's important to you.
okay. All right,
And I do have another question about the conditions. So in the motion, there are several things that sound like they should be conditions, and I just want to be sure that if they are conditions, and I'm looking at you, Clay, because they're the ones about working with the city on the crosswalk,
Yeah.
and are those really going to be added as conditions? And if they are, then I need to check with the applicant to say what you see in the motion, and I don't know if you have that in front of you. Are those?
they do seem like they're conditions, and I see why they're put into the motion in some ways, but it does feel like they need to be listed as a, I don't know, number.
It's fun that they're written out. Sometimes
Whatever.
we
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that, but knowing that we would be adding that to the
Yeah, yeah.
conditions. So
Okay.
it's a lot, but we do sometimes have things that say, we'll work with the city to do this crosswalk. We'll work with the city
Yep.
to create whatever you're doing on Biltmore Avenue.
Basically, everything on the left side should be condition, whatever.
We'll
where
fit
are
it
we
into
at?
the conditions if you're
Yeah.
agreeable to it.
That changes to a number, I don't know, you can put that as number 13 and everything just moves down,
And we'll have
something
it,
like that.
if it moves on to council, it will be
Yeah, yeah.
incorporated into that. I just want to get on the record.
It's in the suggested motion, but it's not in the project, it's not in Exhibit E.
It's not an, these
Just
things
got done.
literally got done hours ago.
Yeah, so it just-
As the details rolled in from all the different departments on what's going on and what we could and could not do. And now that I'm looking at it, I see typos.
So in reading this is another question I had. Do we really need to restore the 3 existing curb cuts? I had to remember where those were, and I pulled up the Google map, and 2 of them look like they're gonna go to nowhere if we restore them.
No, restore the sidewalk.
Okay.
Restore them, I'm sorry, restore the 3 existing curb cuts to a sidewalk.
Okay. that-
So there will be
yeah.
curbs.
I was gonna say, restoring 3 existing curb cuts makes me think, oh, you're tearing up the sidewalk and you're gonna put the curb cuts back, but we don't.
No, that
See
would be
where I'm getting?
absurd.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Eliminate 3 existing curb cuts.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Oh, boy, this is gonna be fun to read.
Well, something in the past you've said, and the conditions we've discussed, and you don't have to
Yeah,
read them
true.
all out. And I guess I did hear from the applicant, you're okay with these adding as conditions?
Okay.
Yes.
And then also making a slight amendment on the conditions number 3, so where it talks about project will include 2 multifamily apartment buildings with separate community amenity space and a minimum of 2,600 square feet of commercial space, the rest of number 3. And then also the staff report with the suggested motion, just changing it so that there will be a speed table, and then again, eliminate 3 existing curb cuts, not restore. It just seems like that's the more appropriate language to put there. Okay, any other discussion among the commissioners?
I just want to note again that I don't think you should add in the
The
For the
one
affordable
about
housing. I don't
working
think
with
it should be.
the housing authority on the
Yeah.
project-based? Okay. That, you can make that move.
I just did.
Okay, thank you. Is anyone, anyone willing to tackle the motion? Or should I just go ahead and do it? Looks like my answer. I move to approve the conditional zoning request for the property located at 319 and 311 Biltmore Avenue from residential business RB to residential expansion conditional zone RES EXP CZ with the following added conditions to those already included in Exhibit E. That the applicant will work with the city to install sidewalks consistent with the following limitations based on available information. Provided the city of Asheville and the NCDOT can produce engineered plans sufficient to design and install sidewalk infrastructure linked to final plans, whether the project includes a signal and/or turn lane construction. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall install 10-foot sidewalks consistent with the final road avenue location, which may include additional sidewalk and plaza space to the edge of the building. In the alternative, if no plans are available, the applicant shall only be responsible for removing 3 existing curb cuts on the 8-foot sidewalks adjacent to Biltmore Avenue. If no later than the end of calendar year 2023, the city and/or NCDOT determine that no turn lane will be built, the applicant shall install a 10-foot sidewalk along Biltmore Avenue frontage. And 2, that the applicant will work with city departments to determine and install an appropriate high visibility crosswalk, which will include a speed table across John Walker Avenue at the access point to both buildings. And find that the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and meets the development needs of the community, and that the request 1, provides infill development in targeted growth areas, 2, increases the supply of affordable housing in proximity to schools, transit, and parks, and 3, promotes the development and availability of affordable housing and affordable and workforce housing.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. I'm going to ask that all those, when you vote, you raise your hand so that we can just make sure we get clear numbers. All those in favor say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
So the motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Bubenik abstaining.
Or not abstaining.
No, I voted nay because of that.
Well, yes, thank you.
Because of the extra motion that he put in.
With
Okay, I just, that's helpful.
Yeah, with that, about the project-based housing voucher part. Thank you all very much. I appreciate the city and all the city departments working Laurel Street as well. I do appreciate the improvements. I'm really hoping this Biltmore Avenue thing can get worked out, and also just keep talking to the water department. Mr. Day, Ms. Sains, please get those things moved. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Did you say what's going on in council, just because?
Oh, yes, this one also goes
This is not
on
the final
to city
decision,
council. Yeah,
just
this is not the
people's
final
vote.
decision, so thank you all very much. All right, hang on, let me get this removed, and we will move on to the next, oh, don't do that to me. Just go away then. We will get on to the next item on the agenda. This is a request to amend the conditional use permit ordinance number 3339 for property located at 509 Biltmore Avenue to make changes to the signage allowances. The properties are identified as the pins listed, sorry, I'm not going to read those all. In the Buncombe County tax record, excuse me, the property owner is MH Mission Hospital, LLLP. The applicant contact is Garrett Schreffler. Planner coordinating review is Will Palmquist.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commission. Will Palmquist, Planning and Urban Design. I will be presenting this request to amend a previously approved conditional use permit. So, I guess, yeah, well, I'll describe the site. Is 509 Biltmore Avenue. It's the site of Mission Hospital. You can see it located here between McDowell Street and Biltmore Avenue. So the existing zoning is institutional. There is an existing conditional use permit for the site approved in 2006 via ordinance number 3339. And so this is a kind of a predecessor to the conditional zoning. We don't do conditional use permits any longer, but they still exist in the UDO, and we do make amendments to them. So just kind of an understanding about that. The existing future land use is employment anchor institution, and no change in that would be required. The zoning would remain the same as well, institutional, and then this request would just amend that conditional use permit that's existing on the site. Essentially, kind of the impetus for this request is that the signage package that was approved for the hospital when the additions and expansions were approved back in 2006 was via a mechanism that no longer exists called the sign package. So we don't do those any longer. So in order to allow for additional signage to be installed at these 4 properties, this amendment to the conditional use permit is the most straightforward way of doing that without having to conditionally rezone the entire site, essentially. So what's being proposed here, you can see the overall signage master plan for the 4 properties that kind of comprise the main hospital campus. It consists of a total of 41 signs, 32 of which are existing and 9 are proposed. You can see them kind of outlined here a little bit more. The total square footage of the sign area for the signage itself would be about 1,400 square feet, and then 900, or about 1,000 of that would be existing signage, with 400 being proposed new signage. You can see that breaks down to new directional signs, new destination signs, signage for different wings and entrances for folks either driving through the site or walking to different uses at the hospital once they've parked, or along the streets as well. So it's kind of a variety of signage that's been identified as needed for the operations for the hospital and for folks trying to navigate to the various areas of that hospital. So in regards to the proposed amendment's consistency with the comprehensive plan, it is consistent with the future land use map of employment/anchor institution, which talks about those areas being a type of campus district named for the often large land parcel areas with more or less a singular cluster of uses and activity, which include, as an example, the Hospital of Mission Health. This amendment would also support a couple of goals in the comprehensive plan: to make streets more walkable, comfortable, and connected by improving wayfinding signage for pedestrians and bicyclists, and to provide resources to connect businesses and workforce by working with colleges, institutions, and local hospitals to deliver contextually sensitive design and development decisions as those institutions expand. The review process is basically this evening, followed by a review and approval by City Council, which I think is scheduled for, I believe it's July 25th at this point. And there are a couple of conditions associated with this request, basically just that the existing conditional use permit would remain in effect, with the additional provision that the total signage for the site would not exceed 41 individual signs, and the total square foot area of 1,500 square feet. Staff recommends approval of the proposed amendment to the conditional use permit with the attached Exhibit E project conditions. And there, we have kind of provided some additional language, if a motion is made, to consider the incorporation of the 7 conditional use permit provisions, which are included as a printout for you all, but that would be needed to ensure that the amendment is still consistent with the guiding language of the conditional use permit. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. We also have the applicants with us here this evening, if you have any questions for them as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Palmquist. Yes, so one of the things we'll need to do as far as the approval of this is find that it is consistent with the conditional use standards that are outlined in, I believe it was 716-2C of the UDO. And I'll just go ahead and read those here now just to make sure it's in the public record. So the conditional use standards, Asheville City Council shall not approve the conditional use application and site plan unless and until it makes the following findings. Obviously, that would be the Asheville Planning and Zoning Commission. One, that the proposed use or development of the land will not materially endanger the public health or safety. Two, that the proposed use or development of the land is reasonably compatible with significant natural and topographic features on the site and within the immediate vicinity of the site, given the proposed site design and any mitigation techniques or measures proposed by the applicant. Three, that the proposed use or development of the land will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property. Four, that the proposed use or development of the land will be in harmony with the scale, bulk, coverage, density, and character of the area or neighborhood in which it is located. Five, that the proposed use or development of the land will generally conform with the comprehensive plan, smart growth policies, sustainable economic development strategic plan, and other official plans adopted by the city. Six, proposed use is appropriately located with respect to transportation facilities, water supply, fire and police protection, waste disposal, and similar facilities. And seven, that the proposed use will not cause undue traffic congestion or create a traffic hazard. So those are the, if we get to the motion to approve, we are agreeing to essentially those 7 conditions as well. Any questions from the commission right now for Mr. Palmquist?
I have a question. Is there any sort of like special lighting, like LED lighting or anything that we have to follow with this, or like brightness rules, or like I know near the airport they can't have signage up a certain height? Like, is there any sort of like rules like that we have to follow around here?
There are some guidelines like that in the UDO for signage, and I think these signs would fall into that. It's kind of a special consideration for the area and size of the signs because it was approved as a CUP, so it's not necessarily being evaluated against the code because of that existing conditional use permit with that previously approved sign package. But I believe the actual design of the signs individually are kind of per code and would meet the code requirements. Some are internally illuminated, but that is allowed with certain provisions.
Right.
Is my understanding. Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Mr. Palmquist? Nope. Well, let's go ahead and hear from the applicant then.
Sure.
I know I have a question. I'm hoping he can easily point out the signs that are being added.
Would you like to come up and introduce yourself and answer any questions?
No, the ones that are added, like where on the map. Yes. That's what I'm hoping he can do.
Good evening. I'm Garrett Schreffler with Mission Hospital. I'm the Director of Facility Planning, Design, and Construction. I've been an employee at Mission Hospital for just shy of 15 years. I'm going to ask Lauren also to come up, if I may. Lauren is with Modulex, our vendor who supports our sign program at Mission Hospital. You asked to actually point out all of the...
If it's possible to point out the location of the 9 new signs.
And that's why I'm asking Lauren to help me.
I tried to find them all. I tried to figure out based on the pictures and everything, but I'm not sure I know exactly. If you can, it's fine.
That's the first one right there. So
Okay.
that's your icon on the top of the tower.
Yeah, and I don't know
Is this where?
if they're supporting, do we actually have the sign elevations in this document?
We can pull it up. It's also, there's a table.
This is written on those pages.
Yeah, on the pages, you can triangulate them.
If
well,
if you don't
actually-
have it exactly, it's completely
This doesn't
fine.
break it up by new or existing necessarily, but
So, Lauren, if I remember correctly, is it's our red? Yes,
This one.
Yeah.
This one. This one right here, because it used to have a base there, but the sign's gone now. And then I think an additional directional here on McDowell Street.
okay, so I'm gonna do the best I can to explain this. So, in the bottom right corner, we have a directional sign there on McDowell Street. Also, on the, what would be Victoria Road, we have another directional. On the left side of the actual building, we have an icon there. What did I miss?
This
Oh, yes.
one.
Also on the right side of the building, in the red icon, we have a logo there.
And we picked signs that we thought would be, these are not actually 100% approved to be installed at any point. We picked signs that we thought if something came up in the future with future growth of the hospital, we wanted to identify the types of signs that would be used in those scenarios. So the allowance is really for a logo, a couple directionals, and an icon, given future use of change of the space.
Okay.
I think the only one that we really are trying to go for right now is the icon on the north tower. That is a planned, that is
Yes.
the one planned one that we do want to do pending this approval.
Yes. That's the large one with the
Dogwood.
kind of clover.
The dogwood cross.
Yes, the dogwood cross, okay. All right. All right, thank you. And so it really, I mean, it's just adding, I think you're adding another 407 square feet of signage, basically. Okay. All right. Any questions for the applicant?
Is that on top of this map, or that's incorporated?
It's all incorporated, yes.
Okay.
And if you have the additional pages to this, each location is detailed out with the photo, the
Yep.
copy, all of the requirements, the square footage for each sign. Every single one of these has one of those. So when you get to the future locations, you'll see they don't have a particular rendering or photo with them, and that's because it's undetermined at this point, but we wanted to include it in as a possibility in the future.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, I think that's it. Thank you very much. We will go ahead and open for public comment at 6:48. I'm not seeing anyone rushing for public comment. So we'll go ahead and close it at 6:49, just to say there was a time frame in there. Anything we need to, other than, because I know
was just
we had the
asking-
discussion in the pre-meeting about making sure we had clarity on the
Those
7
conditions. I was
conditions.
just asking, Will, in the application process, so we've had to change processes a little bit, but with conditional use permits, it would be good to say, why are you doing this change? And it seems to me that because you have changing needs or to improve safety, whatever it is, but I didn't know if your it would, just for the record, so these commissioners know why
Sure.
you're doing it, and you'll probably have to present that to council too, but it's just always good to say, why do you need this?
Sure. Fair point. So obviously, Mission Hospital, we have a campus, right? We're a large facility. At this address, we have approximately 1.8 million square feet. As a 24/7 emergency and critical care facility, we're continuously improving, expanding, and bettering our facilities. Obviously, with the number of points of access onto our campus, there is the continuous need to improve that wayfinding at all levels, vehicular, pedestrian. And so, yes, this request, this application is so that as we continue to identify needs, to make sure that we can provide clear direction to visitors, staff, others, that we can support that with appropriate signage.
All right, thank you. Did you have a question, Commissioner Fairclough?
Yeah, it's gonna sound really dumb. I want to ask it. Is there not like a unified health sign ordinance for, like, I mean, like DOT has certain shapes and signs and sizes they have to abide by. Do hospitals not have like a thou shalt? Or just every hospital gets to kind of dictate what that signage is? I mean, there's not a right or wrong
We don't
answer.
dictate it. I don't know if hospitals have a standard for what's there.
I don't
Remember
understand.
that this was originally approved in 2006.
2006.
So the changes that they asked for in the sign package, what they asked for them was a sign package, a master plan. It just hasn't kept pace with what I guess your needs are. I don't know, but if you have an answer to the standards that hospitals follow, I don't know. We don't impose it.
There are no standards for hospital signage that I'm aware of as far as on the hospital campus. Obviously, the DOT does have standards and requirements for identifying locations or directions to hospitals.
Okay, sure. Then my second question is just, these signs match the existing style of signs and shapes. I mean, I'm fine with it as long as they're matching what's already in the master plan.
Well, and it seems like all the images are, again, consistent with what is already on the campus, and it really is just about increasing the amount of, the square footage amount that they are allowed to do.
Okay.
Based, again, on a 17-year-old, am I correct on quick math? 2005, 17-year-old conditional use permit.
The sign packet is from 2010.
Okay, so on 13-year-old sign package. Okay, all right.
Those are all my immediate questions.
Okay, great, thank you. Is anyone interested in making a motion?
I'll make it.
Okay,
I move to approve the amendment to the conditional use permit for the property located at 509 Biltmore Avenue, zoned institutional, for the allowance of additional signage beyond the previous approved amount, and find the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and meets the development needs of the community, and that the request, 1, improves wayfinding signage for pedestrians and bicyclists, and 2, connects businesses and the workforce by working with local hospitals to deliver contextually sensitive design and development decisions.
I'll second
And you
that.
have to add
And-
something about, and the conditions, and meets all of the required conditions in.
Well,
No, you don't have to read the conditions, you can just do the
Okay.
section of the code, 17.
17, yeah, I was going to say, I'll second it, making sure we include that it meets the provisions of UDO section 716-2C. That's exactly what it was. Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Oh, motion passes 5-0. Yes, we can do that. Thank you very much. Good luck. We are going to take a quick 5-minute break at 6:53. Sorry, Mr. Mitchell. I know that you have one last thing. So, yeah, we'll be back at 6, let's just call it 7 o'clock, because that'll give us 6 minutes.
Game over for Robert. I love it. It's been
But that's why you found some strong. No, I didn't know anything about the outside. Yes. Were you here when Tony Hauser was here?
No, so
Because he
the builders.
definitely said, "My goodness, this and this."
Works with an architect like Joe, brings me some. You know, all what the houses then cost to build.
Which, estimating renovations.
Which one was this for? One, I was like, okay, I get that, and the other one was like, what?
Because.
And well, yeah, just remind me after this that to help work through some stuff on CUP. We even need to start, we need to say now, because it's 60D, we're just gonna have to, just to, and we're gonna have my counsel about quasi petition.
Right, yeah.
Before they, I don't want to give anybody contact about it, it's not controversial, but it is still the way we have to do, so, until we change it, so.
Yeah. I was involved, yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Estimating. True. But was it, I'm not trying to get out of it.
No, it was just, it was
I did not get to see.
It was a lot higher than I expected,
Which one was
based on, relative to another one. I mean, I wasn't like jump at all, but it was just like discussion for another time.
No, I'll talk with you.
Because I know Clay wants to get out of here. And I know Ashley wants, Haley, why was I about to call you Ashley? Haley wants to get out of here. Boy, sorry. No. There's too many new people over there. Now Janice left. Yeah, we can always start without Janice. All right, are we all back? All right. We're going to restart at 6:59. So the final item on the agenda is one that we had a brief kind of preliminary orientation to last month. It is a zoning text amendment. It's a request to consider a proposed zoning text amendment to Chapter 7 of the Unified Development Ordinance to revise the allowed uses table. Planner coordinating review is Clay Mitchell.
Good evening. Clay Mitchell for the Planning Department, I guess, on behalf of this. Chairman, Commissioners, I already introduced this project. I'm not going to go through the entirety of it, but unfortunately, a major rewrite of the UDO is still quite some time off. And so staff has started looking at opportunities where we can make improvements in the UDO that are not going to be significantly substantive changes. And we're drilling down and focusing on ones that not only make our jobs a little easier, clean up the code, but at the same time provide clarity and ease of use for citizens and developers and customers who come in and try and figure out how to access our Unified Development Ordinance. And it's not easy. And so one of the first tasks we took on, because this could conceivably making it easier for us to do different changes in the future is that when we differentiate property with the zoning ordinance, we create districts that have uses that are permitted or prohibited or not mentioned or expressly prohibited. For whatever reason, the current Unified Development Ordinances has 4 of those tables in separate locations. And there are 3 other places where uses are just randomly listed. And so working, not only just noticing that, but talking with development staff, and with us tonight is Haley Mahoney, who without her, this project would have never been done. I just want to let you know that. It's a big challenge for development services to field calls and help people walk through this. And so it became clear to us that we could clarify this issue without making substantive changes to the UDO. Now, why did we do that? We did that because that deserves a kind of outreach and engagement that would make it a very lengthy process. We managed to make this into a fairly lengthy project anyway because we took on a couple additional tasks, and once we really dug into the UDO, we found that there were a lot of issues related to identifying the uses that we could clean up at the same time. And so our hope was, with the additional effort and the additional work, we're going to produce a UDO that, at least when it comes to, I own a property at this location, what can I do with it? You can answer it by going to one location. Whereas in the past, you would have had to comb through multiple sections. And the only way you probably would have learned is making a call to development services, to the planner of the day. And so our hope is that we can make this change, unify all this table, make it easier for everybody. And then if we want to talk about making changes to the uses and where they are, we only have to go to one location and make one change, rather than scouring the UDO for all the different potential locations where it's been listed in the past. So Haley and I did a lot of work on putting this all together in an initial format to try and deliver it to staff. So we did that. I told you about, and I showed you a little bit about our engagement process internally. How can we bring these land use tables, or these use tables together? And that's when we noticed that there had been amendments in the past. There were some language differentials, telecommunication, a clinic versus health clinic. And so we worked with staff, particularly with Chris Collins and his team, on how these interpretations were taking place. And so we were able to merge different uses like this, clinic and health clinic, because it's the same thing and it's always been interpreted the same way. And so we were able to clean up some of those differences between these different table of uses. We delivered that proposed unification to staff and allowed people to just go nuts on it. And we had 58 threads of comments. It's not just 58 comments, there were 58 separate threads as staff commented in. And then we built that new table, and we were about ready to present that. And then I learned what the land use impact table was. The land use impact table is a table that governs non-conforming uses. If someone has a use on their property and they want to change that use, they're allowed to do something if it's the same level of impact. If it's higher, they have to go through an approval process. That table is also a list of uses, and I'll show you an image, but it's incomprehensible. And so we were able to take that land use impact table and put it in the format of our table of uses, which I've almost been sent a bottle of champagne from the development staff, the number of times they've had to deal with this table, and I'll show you and you'll understand. If you're comfortable with this, we will be before the council at the end of this month to get this change adopted. This is what the table looks like today. You probably looked at it. It has columns with all the districts. There's a footnote table at the bottom. We have uses that are permitted by special requirements, which are S's in the table. P's are permitted, S's have special requirements that you have to go to a separate part of the code to find out what those special requirements are. I'll give you a forecast. There's a lot of uses that are listed as S, but there's no special requirements in the code. That's a future issue, but that's part of the problem with why this, I think, has gotten so confusing. In the form-based code, we have a separate table of permitted uses. And this is really what started this whole process. We want to bring the form-based codes into the main table and just make one giant table. The form-based code also has a separate section of special standards for uses that are designated as S. Those we're leaving where they are because we managed to figure out a way to make that work. It's the tables we're going after. River Arts, same thing. This is just kind of an image of what our process was like. So all the little cells that you see, a little orange triangle, is where staff started a thread. You can see the differences between the language and how it can create havoc with people. So we have eating and drinking establishment. Then we have eating and drinking establishments, drive-through facility permitted separately. Then we have eating and drinking establishment with drive-through. And so we had to figure out a way to get through all of that and make sure that we weren't creating any kind of substantive change. You can see at the top, parks, passive, and greenways. We have parks, passive, comma, and greenway, park, comma, playground, greenway. All these different uses were in different tables or in different places, which creates havoc in trying to come up with an interpretation moving forward. And so we've unified all of these, merged the ones that made sense, corrected the differences so that they were consistent with interpretations in the past. And you can see some of the level of thought that went through our assessment of how to merge this and make it happen. So this is our goal. It's not intended for you to read it. This is our result. We would have one unified table. So on the left side of the screen, you see all the existing districts. On the right side of the screen is the Haywood Form Code, as well as the River Arts Form Code. And then on the last column, which I'll show you in a little bit, is the, what did I do here? The wrong presentation. Sorry. Bear with me for 2 seconds. Here we go. So, there we go. This one, this one. Ah, here it is. This is the land use impact table. It's only one section. So you can see how you would access this is you would look at this and say, okay, what am I doing at my place now? I have a candy. I think what that means is candy shop. And then you say, now I want to do an adult establishment. Well, that means you're going from low to medium. And so this is the actual format of the table. So it's very confusing, it's very difficult to use. Many of these uses are not even defined in our UDO, and so it created a nightmare for people trying to administer it. It made it virtually impossible for people who had existing businesses or uses to be able to determine what they could do. And so we changed that to make it look like the existing code, which now looks like, I'm sorry, this is not a very good image here. Didn't capture it very well. On the right side here, on the upper right side, you can see the low, medium, and high. So now all of those uses have been broken out of that list and corresponded with the traditional use table format. And people can just say, okay, I have this use, go all the way across, low. Then I want to go to this use, and they go all the way across, and they'll see whether it's low, medium, or high. Have I explained that despite my distracting movement from presentation to presentation? So this is what the table will look like all the way across. It'll be a giant thing. So again, our purpose is to increase accessibility for the user, which benefits customer service for people that have existing businesses on that land use impact table, and for anybody that wants to do development anywhere in the city. It lowers complexity for staff interpretation and guidance, so it reduces staff time. And it lays the groundwork for future substantive changes with more engagement. So one table, one change. We don't have to worry about multiple changes in different areas. And we can correct some of the formatting errors that AM Legal has done, which we proposed. And also, we can combine this with the Cat Cafe amendment to make one update for AM Legal. So that's already been adopted, but it hasn't been turned over to AM Legal for updating our existing UDO. This is what the ordinance looks like. That is going to go to City Council. This is the part where it got a little crazy. So by unifying the tables, we also determined that we could fix a lot of the weird internal references that are in the code. So you remember me talking about the uses subject to special requirements? For some reason in the past, we decided to list the special requirement and then also list where it's permitted as a special requirement. So you would have the S in the table, and then you would have a list in the special requirements that lays out the specific districts by name. So if in the past somebody changed the use from S to P and they left it here, you would have an inconsistency. And there are plenty of those, and this was something we talked with Chris Collins about. And correcting this, what we would do is just remove all those separate references and at the top just say, see the table of permitted uses. And so all of these changes are going to just, everything is in the table of uses, everything else is in its separate location, and you don't have to worry about all these crazy potential internal conflicts. It'll make the code much easier to use and much easier to read. And so that spun a little bit up and caused some additional work, but there are 156 maybe changes that have to be made to clarify that. But again, they're not substantive changes, they're just cleaning it up so it's easier for people to use. Yeah, that's really it. We recommend a move it, and I've already said Haley has done an incredible amount of work on this project, and I really appreciate all the work. Do you have any questions?
Claire, we're going to mention the mobile food vending thing.
Oh, the food vending thing, yeah, thank you. This is one of those interesting ones. Since October so this is the only substantive quote unquote change. We're adding food vending to the Haywood Road form code as a permitted use. This is one of those.
Food vending. It's
What?
like a food truck. Mobile food vending.
What did I say?
Food vending.
Oh, mobile food vending, sorry. 7:13, that's my limit. I started fading out. Okay, so mobile food vending is permitted in multiple zones, but it was not permitted in the Haywood Road. And so since 2014, the city has been operating under this interpretive document that it is actually permitted. And so we're correcting that. So this is the one place where we're actually adding a permitted use, and this is the reason why. Once we do this, this kind of thing will be very easy to do. And that's really one of the three major reasons why we took this as
customer requested change, so that's we're responding to requests from someone from the public, I believe, to address that. So,
this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So that was a request from I think a business owner. So that's why we're folding it in now for expediency mostly. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, so you're saying you added that to a table of uses, it wasn't there before,
It-
and you included that old interpretation just to show that that's always been our intent to have it.
Yeah, so it is already a use in the main table, but it's not in the Haywood Road form code table.
But it was never intended to not be.
Correct.
So you had to create that document. But
Yes.
now that document can essentially go away because now it
Yeah.
will be included.
So
in
this
the
document
table.
is 9 years old.
Yeah.
So we've been kind of doing this for 9 years. It's
Yeah.
time to put it in the code.
Sure. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah.
Comments?
Oh, sorry.
Anything?
I have a question about
Yes.
the materials. So you said there are 150-something changes to the UDO itself, but I only see one page. Maybe I don't have all the documents that the commission has, but so they would be approving those wording amendments in addition to the changes in the table. And usually you have the materials to show them, oh, this is the changes we'll be making in the UDO. And I just,
Yeah,
are they there or
So we were done with that until we decided to clean up these references. So there's about 7 or 8 pages and we didn't get it done in time. And so so there's a J and that has all of the other 76 internal references that are being changed.
I'm sorry, there's like a J exhibit or something here?
No, it's not in there.
Okay.
That
Got to
what we're
letter
seeing
J.
on screen was not included
No.
in it, yeah. Okay.
This has been worked on since Monday of this week. So we ran up against the deadline.
Okay, so what are they voting on tonight? If they don't have a draft? They don't have, so you have a draft table changes, but they don't have a draft wording amendment, which would normally be this.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have it now? I mean, something that we could just, not that you've explained what it is and
Yep.
that it's nothing substantial.
the proposed final table.
Yeah, it's a table.
Yeah, but so it's just the table,
Right.
because then you'd have to come back for the wording amendment to the ordinance if they don't have it. But they can't approve the amendment to the proposed wording and text amendment if we don't.
If that's not part of it.
Well, I guess I was just thinking for your presentation purposes, you just happen to have just that one page just to show it. But, I mean, technically, you could bring it back, well, when's it going out? You could bring it back on the 21st.
We're not allowed to give Clay a blank check.
No.
It's not just.
Yeah.
Or the people working on this.
Well, it would be as if here's the amendment to the ordinance. Well, I'm not done with it.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
This is what it's going to be, but you kind of have to view it because you're making the recommendation to council. And I'm sorry that I just didn't go through these materials, but it's,
Well, it becomes.
I've never seen a wording amendment where you don't have that. And so I was thinking you were just changing the text, the table, which I thought, wow, that's great if you can change the table without it impacting the corresponding UDO sections, but. And
Well-
again, I don't know if you don't have it, you don't have it. I'm just trying to think, I don't want to hold it up from council. This is something you've worked on, but
Yeah.
you really need to view it. You could approve the table, but you don't have the other materials.
Well, but also too, I mean, the other materials kind of affect changing the table, in a sense, is what I'm understanding as well. And I mean, yes, it could be as simple as just bringing it back on the 21st for the vote.
Yeah, we can,
I think we already posted that agenda.
Oh, shoot, you did. It just went out the other day, didn't it?
Do you have time to?
can you continue it?
We can, yeah, but it's getting it onto the agenda,
The legal ad's been.
because that's in 2 weeks.
Can't you have
But
it?
you
That's
can
2 weeks
continue
today.
it, you can continue it so it's not a new,
Yeah, but can we continue
when you
it?
continue, you don't have to re-advertise.
Do you have
Just
to?
have it ready before council?
Well, you can't vote on it if you don't have it, that's all I'm saying. So you could continue this.
I mean, we vote on stuff we don't have all the time with the affordable housing, so it's a big deal.
Which means not having the exact.
I don't know
That's
what you
the
vote on that you
problem
don't
with
have.
GO, as opposed to
I mean, you have
actual
conditions
text
that
and
have,
stuff.
that but, I mean, this is a zoning amendment, so.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No,
I
no.
know, I'm just asking.
I don't know why I
I'm thinking
can't
the
get
way
this
you can
thing.
do it
Is
is, we continue and don't have to re-advertise. Right, Avery, because when we continue something at HRC, we don't have to put it back, we don't have to put it back out as an advertisement and posting on the property because.
No, but doesn't it have to be something, and the only thing I'm thinking is because it's in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I got it.
We're gonna be right back here.
No, I know.
So, I mean, I
saying
thought the time frame of advertising was 2 weeks.
we don't have to re-advertise if
Okay.
we continue it. I'm
Ah.
saying it's already been advertised and
Yeah.
it was enough information and advertisement. So if you could just continue for your final vote until the 21st and have those materials available.
Yeah,
And
that's,
post those on the website. So to them, so they have a chance to review.
So these are the changes,
Oh, okay.
but I did not get it to you in advance of the meeting. So this is all of those references.
Are they all just in the definitions? No.
No, it's the uses
Okay.
that are subject to special requirements.
Can we do like a special vote via email?
No, that would be a public meeting.
Yeah, we
As
can.
soon as it becomes a
I'm-
vote,
Yeah,
it's a
let's
public
just
meeting.
continue it for the.
I'm perfect, yeah, Haley and I can have this on Thursday and Friday, and we will have it out to you in its final form, which will be in the form that the council will look at, and will include everything so that you have all the information to vote on the 21st. If you would do that, I would really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because this one will be simple enough that it shouldn't be 15 minutes then to,
Yeah, and it was simple until we kind of discovered, this meeting had been, started before we realized
Yeah.
how much work it was going to be with the subject to special.
And I'm sorry, I didn't read.
No, that's all right.
To notice that, but it is such a, it's a formal process, and it can't go forward without a vote
It
from the
was a
planning and zoning commission.
special meeting, but yes, we can add to the agenda.
That's fine.
I mean, that's not, yeah, well, I wouldn't necessarily be adding, like, if we were continuing 319, I would have pushed that to July. This is so
As long as
small.
it's listed on the.
I guess I should ask, is everybody else here?
Because it was already public, we're not changing it from what was already public.
Because you're trying to get, so when are you trying to get it to the council?
27th.
Of this month?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, yeah, okay.
Motion to continue.
Well, before we do that, let's go ahead. I gotta do it because it's a public thing. I'm gonna open for public comment at 7:22 PM. And I'm gonna close for public comment at 7:22 PM. Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Bubenik.
I make a motion to continue this till the 21st, till June 21st meeting.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. I apologize
No,
for
no,
taking
no,
up
no.
your time.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's all good.
it's okay.
Luckily, we have the June 22nd meeting already.
I know.
So that makes it
Talk
simple.
about- I feel very fortunate.
Yes.
21st.
21st, sorry. And so, to that end, that concludes everything on tonight's agenda. And as previously noted, so we will be having, we're going to host have a mid-month meeting on Wednesday, June 21st, specifically to hear about the Project Aspire, which is a joint project between the YMCA and the First Baptist Church, if I'm not mistaken. That's correct, on Woodfin Street, Woodfin, Charlotte, and College. We will also have this. There will be no pre-meeting. That meeting will start here in this room at 5 p.m. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes. We are adjourned at 7:24. Thank you.